Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is the podcast where we listen to something and tell you our thoughts afterward. This is our recommend or refute episode. I am your host, Michael Dixon. We're going to go around the group here and each talk about something that we watched separately and pitch it to the group and whether we would recommend or refute it. With me, as always, Ryan King.
Hey, how's it going? I actually watched a number of movies. Like, the kids are out of school.
Oh, wow.
I haven't had too much to do at the end of the day. I've actually watched some real movies recently.
Define real.
Like movies that other people probably have heard of, not notoriously, but maybe actually heard of.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And John Garcia.
Thoughts together strong, Dixon. That's what I have to say after watching too many Planet of the Apes movies. So I'm ready to bring something that isn't Planet of the Apes to this.
Did you at least watch The Simpsons Planet of the Apes during all this?
I did watch. You're just talking about the musical segments.
Yes.
The musical, yeah.
I did watch that. Of course I did.
Good.
I just can't log it on Letterboxd.
Very unfortunate. You can't log a segment of an episode of television on Letterboxd. Very upsetting. Cool. All right. Well, Ryan, why don't you kick us off and tell us what you watched this week, since you say you watched a real movie.
Allegedly.
Yes, I watched some real movies. Yeah, no, I actually got in a River Phoenix doubleheader that kind of was just like I'm trying to look for things to watch with the family, going back and hitting, some 80s and 90s movies, like trying to go back and get some things now that they're a little bit older to kind of hit those movies I haven't watched in a while or I know are good and just want to fill in. And I kind of have ones I've like just tagged to like follow up on, one of which was The Explorers.
They were just like everyone else. They dreamed of going to the stars. But unlike everyone else,
what's going on here?
they discovered a way to get there.
You dreamt it, I built it, and it's our secret. It's pretty neat, huh?
Then they took it one step further,
I christened the Thunder Road.
and it worked.
Look how fast we're going. I bet we could go anywhere. Do you realize what it means?
Now they're about to find out just how far it can go.
Which is one of those probably under the radar movies, and probably kind of for a reason. John, it's by Joe Dante.
Oh.
It's your boy.
Okay.
So you probably should check it out because it has Joe Dante trappings of it.
Ethan Hawke is in it.
Hell yeah.
Right. So this is Ethan Hawke's first role and River Phoenix's first role, or movie role. I think they have done TV and TV movies and stuff. So this is their first like theatrical role. So yeah, super young Ethan Hawke. The premise is like Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix and one of their other friends who didn't grow up to become a major actor otherwise, sadly, through Ethan Hawke's dreams, make a thing on their computer that makes a ball that can float around.
This Michael Crichton sphere? What the fuck is this?
Yeah, kinda. And they can control it from their like Apple II that the kid has, which actually I was reading about from Joe Dante that this was like one of the most, it was like a $35,000 computer that they had to borrow to make the like effects of having a digital version of the room that the kids were sitting in so they could show it. Like, and had to like make an advanced program just to do it. I'm like, wow, no wonder this movie gets like, it got edited quickly and kind of slapped together so you can kind of tell when the movie starts to like go because the studio just took over and was like, this is getting too expensive, Joe Dante. We don't understand what the hell you're doing.
Give me that, Joe Dante. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. I recommend it as like a watch, early, an early Ethan Hawke or River Phoenix. It's interesting to see how good these kids can be in these roles. And an interesting Joe Dante catch. River Phoenix plays like the nerd in it. I mean, not the nerd. He plays the nerd in it, who's the one that has the computer and wears glasses and a suit to school and shit. But because we were watching that, and I know the family kind of ended up not being into it, I was like, let's just flip to something like that I know is a full-on good movie that has River Phoenix. And so we watched Stand By Me.
We interrupt to bring you an update on the search for the missing 12-year-old Ray Brower.
In all our lives, there's a fall from innocence, a time after which we are never the same.
You guys want to go see a dead body?
It happened in the summer of 1959, a long time ago.
Oh man, man. Wait to hear this. Wait to hear this.
For some, it's the last real taste of innocence.
I'm never gonna get out of this town, am I, Gory? You can do anything you want, man.
And the first real taste of life.
This was really a good time. The most. A blast.
But for everyone, it's the time that memories are made of.
So darling, stand.
Which is kind of like the opposite role for River Phoenix from the previous one. So I think it's interesting to see a kid at this age. I've said it a couple times. Nobody knows. River Phoenix was Joaquin Phoenix's older brother, has passed on. But that family's had success in acting, and River is kind of the one that cut the path for that family to move forward. In Stand By Me, he's much more like the regular kid. He runs their gang, their group, or whatever. His family's kind of like the poor-ish family that's kind of looked down on. But yes, like very much the opposite. The kid that probably would beat up the nerd in the previous movie. And it's interesting to see him be able to carry both. Stand By Me has Will Wheaton. I think this is like his first theatrical role. River Phoenix, he's now had a couple. Corey Feldman, who's also had a couple. And Jerry O'Connell might be his first, but one of his first, if not. And I was surprised that I didn't remember Kiefer Sutherland is also in it.
Oh, wow.
And John Cusack is in it for a couple scenes as Will Wheaton's character's like older brother. The script is based on a short from Stephen King when Stephen King was writing under a pseudonym, things that weren't what people expected Stephen King to write. Now I think we've kind of gotten over that, but this is definitely one of those like Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, where people are like, wait, what? Stephen King? This doesn't seem like Stephen King. He can write shit. It's not just weird shit that he forgets how to come up with an ending for.
Was he coked up when he wrote this too? Or was that during that?
Yeah, I think that was like a blur, right? That was until like 2004 probably.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Drunk or coked up or whatever. I think he went through a couple phases.
Each one has a different pseudonym.
Yeah. So this one isn't a horror story from him per se. The premise is these kids hear about a missing kid, and a kid that everyone knows has been missing, that apparently his dead body is like out by these railroad tracks. Like maybe he got hit by a train. He was out there for whatever reason. The whole thing takes place in like the 1950s. It feels very fucking 1950s. I kind of forgot how it just is absolutely like a snapshot of everything that was probably wrong with that time period and how children were looked at and what children did and got away with. And the idea that the kids would just be like, hey, let's just go fucking find that dead body. That sounds awesome. We'll tell the cops and then we'll be famous. Everybody will be excited and we'll get to see a dead body. Like, yeah, that's cool. Like that's the start of the movie. That's the premise. But it uses this trip of the kids exploring, like it takes them like 2 days to walk to it, honestly, down the railroad tracks and kind of through the woods. And you learn a little bit about each of them. They constantly fuck with each other, like boys fuck with each other, especially like 1950s. Very much the system is alive. Boys fuck with each other. I looked beforehand to be like, okay, is rated R, but this is the mid 80s where, thanks to Joe Dante's Gremlins, and a few other things, people suddenly decided PG-13 maybe wasn't enough to describe some movies. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, is this in that, like, we got really scared and shoved a PG-13 up to R, and like this movie wouldn't be R today? And I looked and it was like, oh, it's really only rated that because they say the F word like once. Which now you can do
one fuck
in
in PG-13. You get one.
Yeah, now you can
Dixon,
do it.
you can't say fuck on this podcast.
Oh shit! Did I just take this to an R?
God.
Yeah. I think they actually say it 3 times, but they say everything else in the book, which I think probably pushes it up to R.
It's like Predator.
And yeah, there was a bit where it was like, there's some sexual innuendo, and there was like more than sexual innuendo. It was probably a little more straight up, sexual conversation. Yeah, but I will say it probably is things that a 13-year-old probably has heard. Like, maybe they're not. Yeah. If you watch this and the kids think they're supposed to be these kids, it's problematic.
Your son the whole time? You're like,
yeah, right. Yeah,
know. He knows.
Fuck, has he heard someone say shit before? I don't know.
Yeah, he's definitely heard it in this house. Sadly. Yeah, I actually think before we started the movie, I was like, okay, it's rated R because there's a couple of F words. And I was like, that's not anything you probably haven't heard. And Mom was like, Darla goes like, on like a daily basis, maybe from me one time. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we let one slide here and there now that they get older. The real touch of this movie is how the boys interact with each other. You kind of learn their backstories as it goes on. They actually are open to becoming more emotional and actually talking about some of their problems, and how they kind of are better for it by the end in some ways. Richard Dreyfuss is the like voiceover that's
Richard
like narrating
Dreyfuss.
the whole thing.
Buried the lead, man.
Hooper, what are you doing in outside of Amity?
He kind of has the like Ron Howard Arrested Development role of like saying something, after somebody says something, or working us along, like a very active narrator.
They thought it would be fun to go find that dead body. It wasn't.
It wasn't. Yeah.
This is going to be a summer we'll always remember. The boys wish they hadn't said that.
So, yeah, I think all in all, it still really holds up. I was kind of just surprised at how crass it was. I wonder, I hear a lot where people are like, I can't make movies like they used to, thinking that like this one does have the kids cuss a lot. And they smoke and they drink, like, and not they smoke, like, because it's set in the 50s, the kids just fucking smoke. And that isn't like they even mention like necessarily that they're getting away with it, or they cough and choke. Like, no, these kids have already been smoking. And they comment at one point about how it like the best smoke is after a meal. And that was like, yeah, that probably is an R-rated movie. Like today, smoking actually pushes you up into R, even much less kids smoking. But I think you could still make this movie because at the core, like the heart of it comes through, and the fact that like you're supposed to empathize. You're supposed to empathize. What's the word?
Tyson.
I can't say it.
You gotta empathize.
You gotta empathize with them.
Empathize. We were able to say it for the apes all before. Now I can't say it for humans. You're supposed to empathize. I can't say it.
Empathize. Not emphasize. That's a different word.
Empathize.
Empathize.
You're turning into Jimmy from South Park.
That's right.
Fuck me. It's a leprechaun.
Oh God. Anyways. Yes.
But not think that these kids are actually like, this is the way they're supposed to be. More of like they think they're tough, like they think and then it really is by the time they like see the body that they're like, shit, he's just a kid and we're kids and he's dead and this is fucked up. Like suddenly they age like in that moment. And they have a standoff with some of the older kids, Kiefer Sutherland's character mainly, and that also kind of like they see the difference like of where they are, right, and kind of age up again, and you get the feeling that like after this they're not those same like stupid kids doing that stupid shit. And it takes place like they're just coming out of junior or going into junior high. Yeah, I think they're just going into junior high. They're acting like they're graduating from college at the beginning of the movie, but I think they're just going into junior high, and they're making it like it's this big deal. But yeah, you kind of get the feeling that like maybe they do really grow up at that point and kind of move forward.
Yeah. I haven't seen Stand By Me in a long time since my substitute teacher showed it to me in high school.
Oh, interesting choice.
Is there like a TV edit? Because there
I don't remember really what happened. I just know that I didn't see that substitute teacher again for a while. I don't know if they were the cool one or what.
You didn't stand by him?
I did not stand by him. I didn't have any reason to. I didn't see a dead body.
Yeah, beyond the kids like smoking and drinking, they pretty much call each other pussies probably every 4 or 5 minutes about something or the other.
Yeah,
so
right.
all the kids are basically Shane Black from Predator. Yeah, we all know this.
Yeah.
Talk about that shit. I do remember them being all precocious little scamps. But I don't remember much beyond it. I haven't seen it since then, so I want to go back and watch it now.
One thing that was super weird to me, the beginning of it, they go into their like clubhouse, and the three of them are up there. Jerry O'Connell's character hasn't showed up yet, and in this movie, he's the fat kid of the group. Like that's the
He's the
the
chunk.
role that he plays. Yes, he's the chunk. But what's crazy is I was watching it. He comes in and he's like, comes running in. He's like, guys, let me in, let me in. And they're like, oh, you got to do the right knock. And he's like, I forgot the knock. And then he comes in and he's like all out of breath trying to tell him this crazy story because he ran all the way there. And I was like, God damn, this is the fucking Goonies.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
this
just
is so much the
again.
Goonies. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and Corey Feldman is sitting here. And when I looked, I was like, Goonies is 86 and this movie's 85. Like, Goonies was actually after this,
Oh,
I think.
wow.
Or they were so close to each other in production that there's like no way. It just is like coincidence, I guess, that it
It's
happened.
like the Deep Impact and Armageddon of the 80s.
Yeah.
Man.
Goonies
so,
is
yeah, I was kinda-
85. Stand By Me is 86.
He's 86.
Oh,
okay. So
okay.
it's like
There you go.
maybe they took it from the Goonies, but it's like it would have been
to
so
be by,
close to
like,
each other.
the
I
seat
doubt
of their
it.
pants if they were really
Yeah.
stealing from others.
I've actually not seen Goonies or Stand By Me.
I
Ah.
feel
Yeah.
like Dixon wouldn't like Goonies, but he might like Stand By Me.
Yeah, I was like, Goonies is the better movie, but you'll probably like Stand By Me better.
Yeah. It's more fucked up.
Yeah, that's right. That's our barometer for you. This movie's way more fucked up. Dixon would
Yeah,
love it.
no, like, yeah, Stand By Me is
This'll rip
really
God
pretty
from
solid.
you.
Like, this is good. Yeah, it's good acting from the kids. It's a good message. It's an interesting kind of look back on the time. It's an interesting. This is that 80s has nostalgia for 50s movie, right? So you're also getting a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Kind of look back. The Goonies is just like stupid fun.
Yeah. Ryan, I know this day may never come, but if you ever show your family Simon Birch, please let me know what they say.
Okay, that might be a hard sell.
What did Darla think?
Oh yeah, she dug it. Like, I think there was a little bit more side eyeing because it was just another one of those I forgot how inappropriate this movie might actually be kind of
It was
movies.
the
But
80s.
How old are your
it
children?
was the 80s. My son's 13.
Okay.
My son's 14, about to turn 15. Like, he's
Oh.
real close now to being 15. So like,
So he's saying pussy
a
and
lo-
he's smoking and
Yeah.
all that shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
totally,
yeah.
he's a
Uh,
lost cause. He's probably talks like this and
Yeah.
thinks his parents don't know.
Mazel
Yeah.
tov.
Yeah. My daughter's 11.
Oh,
So she's
impressionable
actually
mind.
like, she's actually the age these kids are supposed to be.
Oh,
in
interesting.
this. Yeah.
She hates Encanto, huh?
Yeah. She
She's
hates
already
Encanto.
there.
River Phoenix was
Really
born in
exciting.
70, so it's coming in 86. So he's maybe 15 when it's shot, and he's supposed to play
Right.
an 11-year-old.
This is that, like, well, I mean,
Baby-faced.
Will Wheaton still looks like 20, right? Like, so there's
Yeah.
like Ethan Hawke. Like, these, you get
Uh-huh.
the kid that like can play the role down
Yeah.
in age, and they kind of grow up, and you're like, oh, they kind of still look like children.
We
Mhm.
did talk about how Linda Blair played a teen in Savage Streets when I was going through Schlocktober. I know y'all don't remember that, but
Nope.
I do. She was clearly 15 when John Vernon approached her as the principal and said, "You're not killing other teens, are you?" And she said, "Not at all."
Oh, John Vernon.
The 80s. What a time. What a time to fake your
What a
age.
time to be alive. Moon pies.
Moon pie.
What a time to be alive.
I will say, yeah, of these two movies, Stand By Me is the one you can watch. That's like, it has a really solid plot. You know, these interesting characters. There's something to talk about and working it through. The Explorers is your Goonies movie. If you're looking for the like,
It's just
I liked
adventure,
Goonies and I want
some
something else. Yeah,
fucking
to kind of
thing.
like look back nostalgically and,
Nice.
and be kind of stupid. It's that, which is probably Joe Dante movies, right?
Yeah.
I think Small Soldiers is that for the 90s.
Yeah, I would agree. Cool.
Cool. All right, John, what do you have for us?
Well, in between watching The Square and all the other Planet of the Apes movies, just a Terry Notary festival that I've been going through.
Did you watch The Circle,
did you
that
watch,
awful
like-
Tom Hanks
I
movie?
didn't watch The Circle.
Oh, no.
No, I didn't want to do that. Isn't he
Did
Mark
you watch,
Zuckerberg
like-
in that movie or some shit? I don't.
Sort of. I think I didn't watch it.
Gross. Anyways, well, Ryan.
Did you watch like Beneath the Planet of the Apes and
No, I didn't watch those
Or
two.
did you- okay,
I
you
didn't
just
watch
watched
those
the one
two.
trailer.
Around the
I
Planet
will.
of the Apes.
I will watch those
Next to
because
the
I
Planet of
have
the
to
Apes.
At this point, I've watched the Tim Burton one. I've watched the original.
Okay.
Did all the other shit. I have to do that.
you can enjoy the fact that they immediately undercut anything the first movie did.
They basically kneecap each film subsequently because they need to make more money. Anyways, I watched those. I watched Hitman on Netflix because I still got a subscription for some reason. I forgot to cancel.
I watched that. It was pretty good.
It was all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was, good enough. Questionable ending, but whatever. And then I decided while I was perusing after I'd watched Hitman, just like, oh, what the fuck else is going on Netflix? What's going on HBO Max? Max. And I remembered I had this synaptic bolt that hit my brain, and it said Ricky Gervais. And I said, what? What the fuck are you talking about? And it said, you remember Ricky Gervais holding pizza boxes and doing like a Moses thing? And I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then it followed up that with The Invention of Lying. And I was like, oh, that was a fucking movie, wasn't it? That was a thing that came out in theaters when I was working as a projectionist. And I never really watched it. I just saw that scene. And I thought, I've gone through nihilism, and I'd, raised Catholic, and we had a discussion on silence. And I thought, fuck it. This movie, told from an atheist, produced by an atheist, it could be interesting. So I decided to go and watch The Invention of Lying.
Imagine a world where everyone can only tell the truth.
I had a little sip of this from right there.
I'm with him right now. Seems nice. A bit fat.
She's way out of your league.
No, I won't be sleeping with him tonight.
About everything.
I loathed almost every minute that I worked for you.
Don't you wish you could change things?
How much are you going to be withdrawing today, sir?
$800.
It says here that you only have $300. It seems our system has made a mistake. Here you go.
This fall.
I said something that wasn't. Huh? I'm black. I knew it. I'm an Eskimo. Fantastic. I'm a one-armed German space explorer. When's your launch date?
Mark Bellison will discover.
I can have my life the way I want it. You're losers, doesn't really count. Good. I settled then.
The truth.
I'm different now.
Are you better looking?
No.
Did you buy new clothes?
No.
Have you been to the gym?
No.
About lying.
Why do you hate Mark so much?
Because he's a loser. You want to marry a strong genetic match and maybe one day have children that aren't
little fat kids.
But hold on, though.
The Invention of Lying.
This is the greatest movie ever made.
Which is a movie that is it fucking directed by? It's directed by Ricky Gervais, and it's co-directed Ricky Gervais and Matthew Robinson. It's also co-written by those two as well. And it's like the worst parody of a Twilight Zone episode. It has like a stacked cast that I didn't expect. It's got like Louis C.K. before his fall. It's got Jonah Hill.
Jeffrey Tambor before his fall.
Jeffrey Tambor before his fall. It's got Jonah Hill before his fall. It's got Tina Fey before her fall.
Christopher Guest.
It's got Christopher Guest before his fall.
Did
before
he fall?
Anybody's fall. I don't know. I don't know if Tina Fey or Christopher Guest fell. I just am saying at this point, I'm lumping it on. But it tells the story of Ricky Gervais, who is a loser in the terms of the synopsis as well.
Sounds like typecasting.
Who, just like can't catch a break. The only funny part about this movie is that it's in a society of people who don't know how to ingest anything that's not truth. And it permeates into film, where the only films they can ingest are films that are just history told to them by somebody sitting in a chair next to a prop that represents the century that they're talking about. And so like Rob Lowe is the greatest writer in this film production studio. And he has the 1800s to the 1900s and 20th and the 21st century. And so he's telling them all about the Industrial Revolution, and like not even the Industrial Revolution, but like the effects of it and like colonization and all this other stuff. And Ricky Gervais's character is stuck with the fucking 1300s, talking about the bubonic plague and how nobody likes that. And everybody fucking hates him because he tells them shitty, boring facts about humans that died and never survived. And that is the whole crux of his situation, is that he has been dealt a shitty hand. He's a loser, and something deep within him, when he gets fired from his job for being shitty at telling history, good history, it's like an idiocracy thing, is that when he goes to the bank to withdraw his money, he decides he should withdraw like $500 over. And whatever that is his invention of lying. and he dates Jennifer Garner and lies to her about who he is, lies to people about what is moral and what's not moral because everybody else is stupid. Philip Seymour Hoffman shows up.
Jesus Christ.
In like he's a bartender who believes anything, and it's just everybody believes anything that Ricky Gervais says because everybody's always told the truth all the time. It is an interesting premise. I won't fault it for that. However, past a certain point, beyond it being a short film, it falls apart so fast because the moment that you start telling lies and building this kind of like Jenga and or equivalent brand that can't be sued for trademark infringement stack, you just get to a point where you're like, there's no way logically that any human being would get here organically. Like there's no way. Like people, Ricky Gervais's mother is in a home and she's dying and he tells her that she's dying. Everybody still buries their dead for no reason, even though they all know that they're going nowhere. They just do it.
That's unhealthy. It's unhealthy.
It doesn't make any sense.
That's how humans started. It like can't have a dead body laying around.
Sure, but they also threw garlic on the body to keep the fucking smell away.
Yeah, because it smells.
Yeah,
this is all sensical. If they were putting a cross on top of it, then that would be something, John.
I mean, why even have a ritual? They have a funeral for it, Ryan. Why not just dump that shit in a ditch? Okay, like get the body out of there. That's cost effective. You have no. Why not? You know, they're not going anywhere. Why do a ritual?
I think,
that's what I'm saying.
I think if they're fully
John, I'm
truthful,
not coming to your funeral. I just want you
I've always instructed people to dump me in a ditch somewhere, so you'll never be able to find me.
In a world that's fully truthful, they wouldn't have coffins because those things are fucking racket.
Yeah, exactly. In my will, I said, dump me where Hoffa is, and we'll see how it goes.
Solved.
I want to put my body to a cause.
So the executor of your estate has to solve Jimmy Hoffa's murder and find his corpse.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You know what? Use your death for good cause.
All right. Interesting.
Find Jimmy Hoffa. Oh my God. I've painted houses before, but not in that way. Not in that way.
Okay.
So
not with blood.
Yes, not with blood. I haven't painted anybody's wagon with blood. Anyways, Ricky Gervais's mom, she's dying in a hospice and she's afraid, and the whole crux of Jason Bateman is the doctor. He fucking shows up.
What the fuck?
And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. She's dying. I guess, where do you want us to dump her body? Like that kind of shit. And
I'm sorry, we've lost him. I mean, he leapt out the window.
Yeah. And like,
he just looks like he's dead. He's got like blue paint on him or something.
And so Ricky Gervais, his mom, there's like emotional scenes that just don't tether me to them at all. But his mom is like, I'm really scared. I'm afraid because she can't, and again, interesting premise. People can only tell the truth. It's kind of sad to hear people talk about themselves dying. They're in a home, like all this other stuff. There's a lot of mechanisms at play that would have made this interesting if it didn't just get tired and old as it continued to talk about itself. And like right when she's about to die, Ricky Gervais is like, you don't die. You go to a place where you're happy and everybody can be there with you. And like he uses lying to comfort her. And that's an interesting position to take. Mm-hmm. Like to use that to provide some kind of assistance to people. And then it spirals out of control where everybody else is like, he knows about the afterlife. He knows about, there's some old man in the sky that he keeps talking to that nobody can see. And like, what the fuck is that about? And there's all these kind of like questions people have for him, puts this pressure on him. And Jennifer Garner dating him is like, I could never really be with you committedly. I should be with Rob Lowe. He has better genetics. Like everybody subscribes to eugenics because it's truth.
Oh,
which is fucking weird in its own. So I don't know. There's just those bits of it. And towards the end, it ends up being a rom-com where he interrupts a wedding and Jennifer Garner is like, I do love you, even though I was going to do this wedding.
Oh, this sounds really bad.
Yeah. And I like, I never laughed throughout it. I never had a moment where I thought it was funny. I thought that parts of it had potential and that it was well executed in what it was trying to do, but that it wasn't amusing past that initial thought. It was like a high thought of like, what if religion came because people couldn't tell the truth and somebody discovered how to lie to everybody? Everybody trusted each other too much. It's like, okay, fine. But yeah, like by the time credits rolled, I just couldn't give less of a shit about any of the characters in it. Like none of them were redeemable. None of them had arcs. Ricky Gervais sort of had an arc. There's like a moment where he decides, it doesn't even make any sense, but he's talking to Philip Seymour Hoffman and Louis C.K. and he's like, if you could get away with anything you wanted to do, what would you do? And they were like, touch boobs and like, fuck. And he's like, all right, sure. And he goes and just tells a woman like, the world's going to end unless we absolutely have sex now. Like we need to go fuck somewhere. And she's like, do we have time to get to a motel? And he's like, yes, we do. The asteroid is not going to hit the earth until then. And then he goes to the hotel and he's like, shouldn't we get to know each other? And she's like, no, we need to have sex to save the world. And then he fakes a phone call with NASA where they say everything's cool. And that's like the gag. And after that, I was like, none of the rest of this movie is anywhere near as funny as this. And this wasn't even as funny. So The Invention of Lying, interesting premise. Again, parody of a Jordan Peele produced Twilight Zone episode. And if you've seen one of those, you know what I mean.
This sounds like the inverse of Liar Liar.
Yeah, it kind of is.
It's like a guy who lies in a world where everyone tells the truth versus a guy who only can tell the truth in a world where everyone lies.
Yeah, it's basically the log line. Why not?
Yeah, but it sounds much worse than Liar Liar.
Yeah, I would not recommend it. I refute it. And if anybody out there has contrasting opinion, let me know. I really want to know what the fuck you thought. I will absolutely fight you in the comments of my Letterboxd.
It really feels like that kind of
Kumite.
It really feels like the kind of thing that Ricky Gervais could tell, like as a stand-up routine of like weaving in these bits where he starts with like, oh, what if everybody told the truth and like you could do this or this and maybe that's where God comes from and just kind of riff off of that. Like making it into a movie doesn't quite work.
Yeah, it reminded me of like the Patton Oswalt bit about space cake and how like they were like cavemen that were beating each other up and then one of them was like, don't do that because you won't get the space cake when you die. If you die, everybody who is nice to people gets space cake. But yeah, like just not good. Not a good execution.
Yeah. Is there any cast member who survives this? Like who you're like, you know what? I enjoyed their presence in the film. Like all the ones that you've mentioned, like there's even more than that. There's John Hodgman is in this. Like always loved John Hodgman.
John Hodgman was fun.
Martin Starr.
Also
from Silicon
fun.
Valley.
Everybody who's a bit player has a great time.
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton as well. He's a police officer who just pulls them over. Yeah. Louis C.K.'s been drinking like just like shots and shots of whiskey. And he's like, I'm probably good to drive. And the moment the cop pulls him over, Edward Norton is like, I pull you over because blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I've been drinking. And Ricky Gervais has to lie to Edward Norton. And it's like, all of those bit players get to play dumb and it's fun to watch them. Like Martin Starr's like, I hate my job. John Hodgman is a priest who believes in the big man in the sky after Ricky Gervais has established that. And Ricky Gervais is like, I disagree with these things. And John Hodgman is like, the big man in the sky says these things. And Gervais is just like, shut up. Like, that's not what this is about. Like there's funny undercuts of those characters. I would say out of the core cast, the person I like the most is Jennifer Garner, because she just has to play a Hallmark character who is very honest about what she's looking for in a person. And it's parodical in a different way that I don't think is intended.
Right.
The movie intends it to be like this is usually what a beautiful woman looks for, but thinking about it in that lens of like, here's what a Hallmark lead would be is funny. So I enjoyed Jennifer Garner's performance for that.
Interesting. What about Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Oh, he's great. Obviously, Philip Seymour Hoffman in any role is great. His heart breaks for fucking no reason when Ricky Gervais just says dumb shit. And it's funny to watch him endure that. He's trying to like, he really does. He's really like, oh, I've got to lower my intellect to this and then pretend that I'm there. And he's great at doing that. It's fantastic. So yeah. would say it's that's fun parts of it. If you watch clips on YouTube, I'm sure it's funny. Just don't watch the full movie. Refute it.
Okay.
Is this the like kind of comedy that wokeness is preventing Ricky Gervais from doing?
That's right. I'm sorry to say it is.
What are we gonna do without the Invention of Lying 2?
My gosh.
How will we survive?
Yeah.
The Lioning.
The reinvention of lying.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm going to talk about what I watched this week. I watched a 1964 movie called Nothing But a Man.
Joseph, this is Brother Anderson. He's a nice young man.
Feeling like I need you, baby.
When I met you the other day, I had the feeling that you're different.
Baby, you must be crazy. My wife and I don't want you hanging around our daughter.
Ain't too often I get a chance to meet a girl like you.
You must be plumb out of your mind. You gotta watch yourself pretty close.
If you fellas stuck together instead of letting them walk all over you, they might not try it.
They've been doing it all my life.
Well, maybe it's time you stop letting them.
You sound like a troublemaker.
I had never seen this before, really didn't know much about it, but I picked it up in the last Criterion sale, and I thought the plot synopsis sounded really interesting. It's came out in 1964, is set around that time, and it is kind of about the Black experience in the South in the early 60s. And I was like really enthralled by this film. I thought it was just incredibly done. Believe it or not, it was co-written and directed by a white German Jew who fled from Europe in the 30s and, came to America and, became a filmmaker and decided that he wanted to tell kind of an American story and wanted something that he could identify with from kind of growing up in Nazi Germany, and decided to explore the South. And he and his producer / cinematographer went through the American South, did a lot of research and interviewed people in different cities around the South, and ended up writing this script and making this movie. Ivan Dixon is the lead in this. And like, I don't know how this guy did not become just a huge movie star. Like, he is just incredible in this role, just really magnetic. He plays Duff, who is a man who works on a railroad, like building a railroad. And so he is used to a good union, well-paying job that, has him traveling a lot. And he feels kind of out of place in society. And, he makes a comment at one point in the movie. He's like, I always have felt like I haven't belonged. And so like he likes working this kind of transient job that has him traveling. Like, he makes good money, and he doesn't have to stay anywhere too long and ruffle feathers the wrong way as just a Black man trying to stand up for himself. The movie begins with him kind of stopping in this town. They're working on the railroad outside of the town. They're staying there for a bit, and he ends up deciding to go out one night into the town and meets a young woman who is played by Abby Lincoln, who is a famous jazz musician from the time, famous jazz singer. And they kind of start having a relationship, and he realizes, hey, maybe, I can actually find a place to have a home and have somebody to be with. And then quits his job at the railroad and tries to get work in town and in Alabama, in this town, and try to figure out how to live there. And it's just a very realistic feeling kind of story of the plight of a Black man in the early 60s to just try to make a living and to survive in the American South. He is used to kind of traveling around and having more autonomy, having a good union job, being able to stand up for himself. Ends up in this little town where, unionization is incredibly frowned upon, if not even outlawed entirely, and is trying to do what he can to, not just give in to everybody around him. Like, one of the reasons that, his girlfriend takes a liking to him is because she's like, oh, you actually have some self-respect. Like, you're not like all the other men around here who have kind of just learned how to survive in the existing system, right? And like are less willing to kind of fight for what they want and what they believe in. And it's kind of his journey from the autonomy he had in his previous life to having to deal with existence in the American South and just how hard it is to hold a job and have kids and have a family and be able to survive economically, going from making good money to making shit money in a caste system where he's just trying to hold on and survive. He kind of reconnects with his father who lives in Birmingham, and his father is a drunk and, kind of not really able to hold down his own life. And he's kind of while he's trying to establish his own life and become a father, he's dealing with reconnecting with his dad, who is just kind of an alcoholic shithead who doesn't really know what he's doing. There's not a ton of plot in the movie. It is, kind of a character piece, a hangout film. You're just kind of spending time with these characters. It is absolutely gorgeously shot in black and white. The restoration on the Criterion Blu-ray was incredible. Just really, really well done. There are some big name actors in this too, who are kind of making their first roles. Yaphet Kotto, this is his first screen appearance, who would go on to be in Blue Collar by Paul Schrader and Alien and a lot of other stuff. Running Man, other things, had a great acting career from here. This was his very first IMDb credit. He plays one of the railway workers with Ivan Dixon's character. And then his dad's girlfriend is played by Gloria Foster, who is most famous as the Oracle in The Matrix.
Okay.
Damn. That was kind of her big famous role. And then she, unfortunately passed away when they were shooting the second movie and had to recast her for the third one. But I thought it was just an incredible slice of life experience of a movie. When this came out in the early 60s, it was the people who saw it really, really loved it, but the studio kind of pushed it down and didn't really give it the distribution that it needed. I saw an interview with the director, and he said that when the movie came out, the studio, for all of the marketing materials, wanted to just put dramatic masks over the faces of the actors because they didn't want people to realize that it was a movie about black characters. And Hollywood was so incredibly racist at this time. They just it's like if you weren't Sidney Poitier, they didn't want to put your face anywhere, right? And so the movie dealt with a lot of pushback when it came out. Malcolm X did see it when it came out, and he was reportedly a big fan of it, and met some of the actors after he saw it. And this would have been right before he was murdered. It came out in 1964. He was murdered in 1965. So wasn't too long after that, but he was able to express to some of the actors that he really loved the movie and felt like it was one of the only kind of true Hollywood representations of the black experience. So, I'm just a white dude watching this movie that, I thought it was really impressive the way it was put together, and just a really fascinating character piece. Ivan Dixon is a revelation. I was like, man, I really wish he had a career from here that actually took off and led to something. Like, he has Denzel Washington type of charisma, and I was, like, man, I feel like we were robbed of something not having him in as a Hollywood leading man onward from here.
How would you, so this is 1964. This is 3 years before In the Heat of the Night, which kicks off, even whether it wants to, be heralded as it or not, a lot of blaxploitation cinema. In terms of, I feel like blaxploitation, the genre that gets kicked off after In the Heat of the Night is, it's a very reductive view of the dynamics that happen between just black and white and the sort of political climate in America. How would you qualify this film? It sounds like it's very grounded. It's very dramatic. It's not.
It is, for sure,
a polarized or reductive view of something. Does it feel like it is even with that, does it feel like it's a holistic slice of something, or a much more narrow and honed in slice of somebody's life in how it's portrayed?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a character piece, right? It's like about this guy and his struggles and his, kind of trying to live a domestic life as a black man in America and have a family and a job and all those things and how difficult those things are. I think it is trying to be representative of the larger Black experience, but more than that, it's really trying to hone in on this character and what he is going through as a person. So it doesn't feel like it's painting with a broad brush. It feels like a very specific story that it's trying to tell. And I thought it worked really well. It's like, typically I think the way to make comments about general society is to tell a specific story and to hit things the right way. And that's what this movie does.
Yeah, we talked about in the Planet of the Apes episode, we talked about kind of nostalgia. I mentioned nostalgia being kind of this nugget, this core piece of empathy that different humans can connect with each other on, where there are experiences in this movie that felt beyond like, this is somebody else's experience and I'm understanding empathetically how it happened, or sympathetically how it happened, I should say. Were there things that you were like, empathetically, I understand this. Like I can feel this just in the way that it's portrayed, in the circumstances that are laid out. I've been in some proximity to it, or was it more of, this is a totally different experience, but it's being communicated so clearly that I can feel it this way?
Yeah, I mean, probably more the latter. I mean, like, I'm not going to pretend as a white dude in 2024 that I can like try to understand or have some sort of similar experience to what a Black man in 1964 would have been going through. But yeah, I mean, I think they do just such a good job of showing what this character went through. And like the director talked about how he was like, I wanted to make this movie for me. I wasn't trying to make it for like Black America broadly, but I saw similarities to where I grew up in Nazi Germany as a Jewish man and to what American, Black society was going through at the time. And he's like, I wanted to tell a story that was like, would hit home more with people in the country where I live and work, that is kind of tapping into what I experienced as a child. And so I think it's interesting to see where he's coming from there, but like, he's clearly like, he put in the work to like travel all through the South, interview lots of people, understand what the climate was like, write a script that feels very real. Like the dialogue feels very natural to the South and to what how people would have spoken at the time. And I think it's kind of a combination of, hey, let me tell a story that feels like something that I went through versus like let me respect what is actually happening right now and what these people are going through. And I think that works really well, where it has a documentary kind of feel at parts, but it also feels very personal at the same time. And I also saw interviews with the cast, and they were all talking about how much they identified with the script and how much they loved the movie. And they're like, we just have to tell this story because like, it's not being told anywhere in American cinema at this point.
I think it's interesting, like mentioning the other movies around that time that are trying to start to break into Hollywood, namely In the Heat of the Night and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which are really stories of being accepted in the white system.
Yes.
Assimilation.
Right? Yeah, and not stories of like that just straight up the actual experience of someone, or right. And I think that's part of when we talk about blaxploitation, the reason it ended up coming sort of back around and appealing to many in the Black community was because it was an empowering against the system kind of thing, right? It was much more like, that's us in our film, not the white person saying, here's how you can be okay in society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, In the Heat of the Night, the slap heard round the world, as it's kind of coined, or Sidney Poitier like slaps that dude in the greenhouse or whatever. It just, that whole sequence is built, it's predicated upon a lot of judicial practice, and like, like he had the authority at that point and he had the rights. It was like built like, stack over stack upon logical ways to make white people see that it was justified, rather than to upset like a Southern box office or these kind of, like much more emotional, like we're just gonna immediately break the dam and let black people massacre white people or do that kind of thing in a film, which has never been like I know we just talked about Planet of the Apes, and I know Ibram X. Kendi, who is a scholar who's written a lot about anti-racism and writes about like the permeation of racism in film, has kind of cited Planet of the Apes as an example of a permutation of like King Kong and the vibes that come with like this fear that you would have an other governing your system, governing your world and what you live in. You can kind of look at it through that lens and see very easily, like Charlton Heston being, a white American coming through this planet of apes. What the fuck does that exactly mean? What are the writers really reflecting? Versus something like this that is not trying to make hey, you need to really understand this from your perspective way, but like, I'm going to present it this way and you're going to understand it, hopefully. And it's so heartening. It feels full of love, the way that this film is made, the way that you're describing it, Dixon, like that it is made from a place of like, I understood, I recognized the suffering in another like subculture that is not my own. And I saw the intersectionality of it. And I wanted to make something that spoke to that. And I did. And everybody on board too understood it and recognized it. And that just sounds like lightning in a bottle, like a real cultural phenomena that went unrecognized.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like, it came out in 1964. Like, you have the Poitier films of the 60s, but you don't really have like, you have Shaft in 1971 and you have like more movies that have, whether it's blaxploitation or just movies that like actually will put black actors in them in the 70s and more representation occurring there. But like this was so far ahead of its time, like trying to meet the moment where it was in the civil rights movement, where like we're having these conversations as a society, but Hollywood is refusing to put these scenarios on screen. And, basically still did, because it just didn't get great distribution when it came out and then kind of got rediscovered later on. But it's just like, it's a movie that it feels like it's just trying to tell the truth of what it's like in the American South. And it's like, it's not trying to provide answers or have a happy or sad ending. Honestly, it's just kind of like, this is what it's like. This is what the character's trying to do. It doesn't really resolve itself in a nice bow. It's just like, this is what it's like to be a young black man in the South trying to make a life for yourself. And like, it's not easy. You got to try to find happiness where you can, and it's hard to do.
Well, I want to see this. Do you mind if I borrow your Blu-ray?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
you can for
cool.
sure. Yeah, I'll bring it over next week. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. All right. So Ryan, we have a recommend for Stand By Me. Are you also recommending Explorers?
Yeah. I recommend Explorers. Darla was like, that was weird. The kids were okay with it. So you can make
Ryan
it
is recommending River Phoenix
recommend it.
movies.
Yeah.
Why not?
John is refuting The Invention of Lying.
Yeah. Honestly, The Invention of Lying helped a lot of people. Not the movie, the actual thing, but the movie itself, not great.
Yeah. And I'm recommending Nothing But a Man. So thank you so much for joining us this week. John still thinks it's funny when I said the movie is called Nothing But a Man.
Yeah, he's recommending Nothing But a Man.
I'm just recommending men.
I guess,
generally.
Alex Garland's Nothing But Men. Anyways.
Anyway, joining me as always.
This has been Nothing But Ryan King.
And
just John Garcia. Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.